The number one source of procrastination for solopreneurs, anybody who's trying to get a B2B business off the ground, consultants, business coaches, and the like. The number one source of procrastination is wanting to speak at events, doing workshops, even if they're somehow paid. And all of that, that is a wonderful source of procrastination. Content generally, but I really want to focus today on these types of events that are, you're going to be, hey, you want to speak at this event, and then you have to prepare and all of that. That is a big source of procrastination. Why? Because it is actually good to do it. Most people, when they are starting a business, they are not procrastinating by constantly watching YouTube. I mean, it's part of it, probably, we've all been there, but it's not the actual biggest thing, because most people, when they are starting a business, even if they are still employed, they at least they're grown-ups, they know that these kind of things like Netflix and YouTube and wasting time in this way is not the most conducive for their business, so most don't do it too much. But you can also procrastinate by doing something good. The enemy of great is not bad. The enemy of great is good. Because by doing good things, you can easily lose yourself in it and not make the progress that you actually could be making. Okay, quick intro. My name is Michael Bohannes. My wife and I, we run a B2B sales and marketing agency and a coaching program. And we're so good at it that we offer a full money back guarantee for anyone who joins the coaching program. Client acquisition is not rocket science, and it can be made predictable. And I don't want anyone suffering unnecessarily if it can be avoided. A little bit of suffering is fine, but that's what we do. And so I had this conversation with a client recently who was really excited because she got the opportunity to speak at an event. And she really wanted to tell me about it and wondering what kind of topics she should bring up. And I poured a little bit of cold water on her ambitions, saying that, fine, just do the event, but this is a waste of time. Okay. And why is that? So she's in quite an early stage of her business. She hasn't fully won a client in her main consulting business, is what she wants to do. She's had some other clients on the side. And the idea for her is that if she goes out to these events, there's going to be some relevant people there, and she can then strike up conversations and see if anybody would be interested in working with her. And of course, in principle, that is not a bad idea. Of course, it is a good source, potentially a good source of clients. It's just not a great source of clients. And why is that? Well, first of all, there's a lot of time wasters at those events, right? In her domain, how likely is it that the real decision maker, the person who would be paying several thousands of euros for an engagement, how likely is it that this person would be there? Okay, it's possible, but mostly those types of events where it's like a workshop about a specific topic, and the CEOs there very often in the audience, they usually send some people, and then it's possible that this person who is there likes you, and then they will bring you to the CEO's attention. But come on, that's just so many layers removed if the alternative that we have in this day and age is so accessible. And the alternative, I'm going to talk about that, what instead you should do. But the idea that you go to events and there you will strike up conversations with relevant people, it's fine, but just imagine the cost of it, the time that you are spending in organizing it. Because in this case, what she told me is that she would be involved in the organization of it. And then all the opportunity costs, right? You have to then, make yourself good looking when you go there. You have to have a speech prepared. She didn't have that. So there would be all this time invested into it. And then going there, having chit chat with the organizers and all of this. If you just add up all those hours and you think, imagine what you could have done in those hours, simply reaching out to people, sending cold emails, connecting with people on LinkedIn, hell, even doing cold calls. And this is so misunderstood by people because they believe that anything that is cold outreach is you're bothering people and they will hate you. It's actually not true at all. They will, if it's not relevant to them, but you do it in a good way, in a courteous way. And you just simply present yourself as somebody, hey, this is what I do. I was curious if you're interested. And most people, if you do this in a respectful way, will say, no, thanks, sorry, not needed. And that's it. And then you move on. That applies both to emails, to LinkedIn prospecting, to cold calls, and so on. But the beauty of this is usually there's like a law that I don't know where that law has come from, but it's actually really true, is that somewhere in the range of 1 to 5%, if you do a cold call or a cold email well, 1 to 5% of people will actually take you up on it. But you have to battle through that 95+% of no's, some of which will be rude because some people are having a bad day. And so you have to get through that unpleasant experience of getting so many no's and being ignored if you do cold email and so on, until you get to that percentage of people who actually need what you are selling. And they will respond well to you, and they will actually book a call, and boom, you have a sales call with actually somebody who's in a decision-making position. Okay, so that is the alternative that you could have when you are considering speaking at events. And the same sort of applies to content. Now, I'm not saying you should not do any content at all, by no means. And if you have a good opportunity to speak at an event, do it. It can help. But I would strongly suggest that you plan your time buckets and you say, okay, every week I need to reach out to at least 100 people. Okay, that's a bare minimum. If you send cold emails, you can reach out to 20 people within an hour. Okay, and since if you're starting out, you don't have any clients yet, what else do you have to do? You have more than an hour to spend on client acquisition. So just send emails all day, and you can easily send 100, 200 emails every day, including follow-ups, if you have nothing else to do. And choose your channel wisely. Like for my clients in particular, for her, it's cold calls that would be the most helpful. Right? But of course, those are daunting. It's tricky. It's not easy to do cold calls. It takes a lot out of you. But mastering cold calls versus and overcoming that inhibition of doing them is literally the difference between having a 10,000 euro year or 100,000 euro a year. It really is like this. Why? Because you will get clients. If you do enough cold calls, you learn from your experience, you adjust your offer, you will get clients within the first 3 months. I guarantee you, if you do nothing but cold calling, because what else is there to do? You don't have anything else to do if you don't have clients. So if you just do cold calling for 3 months, I guarantee you, you will get a client. And that's going to make all the difference, because you suddenly have somebody who's paying you to deliver a specific results. And even if you don't succeed, the next client will be much easier to get. Meaning if you don't succeed, if you don't get them the great results so that they will refer you and all of that, you will still have a much easier time getting your client number 2, because you will have had experience closing somebody. So this is the pernicious cycle that you get into it when you do too much content. First of all, there's time wasters at these events. And there's also, you will get very many false signals from people who will comment on your posts and so on, unless they are really qualified. You see that they are highly relevant based on their experience and the job title and all of that. So you will get a lot of false signals. The second thing, it's arguably even worse, is that you are not really adding value at those events. Okay. And what do I mean by that? It's just that when you are starting out as a consultant, even if you have previous experience, you don't know very much about your market. You are not an expert in what you do. And of course, I know, I hope this doesn't trigger you in any way. I'm not saying that you're not an expert, but as a business owner, you don't have experience in really understanding what somebody's pain point is, and turning that into a sales opportunity and into a sales call and into a close. Okay. And the only way how you close someone is if you really can, in a sales call, figure out, and sort of like an archaeologist, like lay bare the number one thing that is their biggest pain point and biggest problem. And once you have laid that bare, this you then use as fodder for your sales pitch. Like somebody says, I am super scared to do cold calls. And then you tell them, okay, so what exactly is it? And now let's lay it bare, okay? And all of that, you just with a fine brush, you realize what exactly it is, what it looks like. And then you can say, okay, I see that your fear of cold calls comes from you having been rejected as a teenager, and that sort of formed you in a very deep way. And you believe that anybody who rejects you then will remember you forever. Okay. And we will gradually work on decreasing that fear by some slow exposure and so on. So you can, by really understanding perfectly where they're coming from, you then sell them. And this experience, you don't have that yet. You don't have fully understood what is your target audience's pain or problem. Because if you did, you'd be selling left and right. and you are not, because it's normal. You're starting out. But if you have not laid that bare, if you don't fully understand their pain points, and there can be many, it's not just going to be the fear of cold calling. If you're like somebody like me, there is simply lack of know-how, how to do content. There is, for example, on sales calls, you simply don't know how to do them. They don't know how to transfer. The main source of clients is actually the transference of confidence. And so there's so many different pain points that people are not aware of, or that are in any other way holding them back. And this you then take, and this is then going to be the fodder for your pitch. But if you are speaking at an event about something in your domain, if you talk about whatever, change management in big corporate, right? And you talk about that, and you only have experience as an employee about change management, and then you talk to people about it, you will provide some value. But if it's really for a decision maker, the real pain points that a decision maker experiences about change management, you will not hit the right tone. And therefore, you will keep receiving false signals from irrelevant people, because you are addressing maybe their pain points, but they are not in a decision-making position. So this is, I hope it was not too complicated, but the whole idea here is that your content is not good enough because you don't have that firsthand experience of having had many sales calls, getting rejected, winning a few clients. Your content is not good enough yet that at those events, you could actually dazzle and impress the real and few decision makers that are actually there. So what's the upshot? My advice, if you are starting a B2B business, any form of consultancy, coaching, even like an agency, if you don't have experience closing people yet, and you don't have any clients, then do content, but sort of the bare minimum. Wherever your audience is, if that's LinkedIn, do LinkedIn. If you believe they're better more on Twitter, do a little bit. Do like 1 hour a day. And 9 hours a day, do outreach, cold email, LinkedIn prospecting, conversational prospecting, cold calls. Just do it. Learn how to do this. And I'm telling you, this will be the difference between you making 100,000 in your first year as a consultant and 10,000, which will probably put you out of business. Okay, because the risk of focusing too much on content is that you are sort of swimming in your own soup. You're marinating in your own little bubble that you've created for yourself with very little actual input from relevant people. And I know you will give me but Michael, there is relevant input from people. Yes, it is. But again, it might not be decision makers. You want to get through to decision makers who are in the position to, decision makers in the position to decide on whether they're going to work with you. But that is the key point. So I know this is probably a little bit painful and hard to stomach, but if you are a starting consultant at the very early stages of what you plan to be building your business in, if you don't have clients yet, stop doing events, stop doing public workshops, stop doing webinars. Okay, even webinars on LinkedIn. Stuff takes preparing, organizing, and you don't really have an audience, right? Unless you have it from a previous situation, which is very rare. So you basically don't have an audience. And you then try to build like, oh, I've got 7 people show up to my webinar and so on, and nobody of them bought. Forget it. Do a little bit, like 3 times a text post a week, twice text post a week on LinkedIn, 1 short video. That's it. Okay, showcase your expertise, talk about interesting things, but then 95% of your time outbound, talking to people, asking them if they have a specific problem, and then booking calls with them to see if you can close them.